Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning again, and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to Season 5 and episode number 826 and a half of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Just make a little adjustment to my camera. There we go. And today, recording day, is still Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. And I'm looking outside the window, and it is still a gray, cloudy day here, but at least it seems to be bright here at the Beaver Lodge. Apologies, kids and cubs, for our last episode cutting out at the end. At least it cut out at the end of a sentence and a block, which is, uh, you know, very convenient for people who happen to be watching. But yes, indeed, Kit Linda, the paperclip and duct tape appear to be holding at the moment. What we are doing at the moment is using the free version of Restream that has a lot less options, and how we did the intro is sharing the screen and doing the intro on the show we just did, playing it, and we'll have to do that for the extra. It would appear that it is possible that the platform we were using, which was still funded by our former network because I guess they had taken a year subscription, it might have run out mid-show, which means that we will have to secure our own account henceforth. It'll be an extra charge to us, I think, of at least nearly $500 for the year to do that. And I had a chance to speak with Mr. Grizzly, who was on his lunch break, because he starts earlier. His lunch break comes a little earlier. And he mentioned that he should be able to load up the intro and extra assets at least today, so that we can go back to our regular quality platform as early as tomorrow. Fingers crossed, if we can do that. So, like I said, hopefully that will work. Additional costs for us, however, I mean, I guess we knew we would be taking on at some point. We had really hoped at some point that we would be joining another network. But for the we were in talks for it, but nothing seems to have transpired for the moment, or things have stalled, or there's been something at their end that makes it such that we can't move forward at the moment. So we have been for a while, back to being fully independent, but now this will be like 100% independent, because now we're even covering the costs of our streaming platform. So Oh, well, c'est la vie, rapidly changing sands, and you have to deal with them as they come. So hopefully, um, said over the course of this year, once we are able to get the podcasts back on, which, as I remind you, kids and cubs, I will be meeting Mr. Grizzly this weekend so that he can try to teach me how to do the editing functions and the cleanup functions so that we can get that. Hopefully, that will mean that our revenues will return to what they were, and the cost that we will incur to take on the streaming platform will be a cost that we will be able to absorb within this calendar year, spread out over the 12 months, because the annual cost of the platform itself is probably close to 2 to 3 months of just basic YouTube revenue. So that would be a quarter of the year, and then we still have to pick up the rest of the stuff again. You know, our subscriptions to various news sites, internet fees, and things like again graphics software and all that kind of stuff. The editing software, the fees for that as well. So we'll be taking on a whole lot more in terms of operational costs now that we are no longer with a network. So, fingers crossed that this will be the correct move for us, because it's always a big risk jumping into the unknown. But there you have it. That is the situation that faces us, and we do wish to keep going. So I guess we pay the fee, and as the saying would say, "Let go and let God." Not that I'm a particularly religious person, but and hope that if you build it and if you pay for it, the audience will come, and they will find the content worth supporting, and that will mean that the financial resources will come as well, and that. When we look back on this particular day 1 year from now, it will be a complete non-issue. And but that, of course, depends on us being able to field a product that is of quality enough for you to want to support, of course. So we've got some responsibilities to take on our shoulders. We need to pull our socks up and make sure that we do right by our audience, because, like I said, 100% fully independent. And remember, we started fully independent, but we were just doing one show a week as an audio podcast. Now we're doing 5 shows a week as a video cast, and trying to turn that an audio cast, and you know, trying to do it all, really. Trying to every now and then have some written stuff and some editorials and things. And Mr. Grizzly's taken a more of a human interest bent with the Grizzly Growl. So we do have 2 shows now for you, instead of one, which is kind of cool. 3 if you include the interview project as being a separate show. So we are growing, but a lot of this is necessity is the mother of invention, rather than necessarily the plan that we had at the beginning. But you roll with it, because very few plans survive first contact. So, yeah, we have it for you, kids and cubs. As we mentioned, the paperclip and duct tape do appear to be holding for now. So, back to our episode, and where we were when we left off. We were talking about some people in the banking sector having a more positive outlook on the Canadian economy. I've got a couple stories here. I'm going to go back to the story we originally had, because, yes, even though it did cut off at a very good part in the first episode, just I like to have the whole package in one. So there might be something that's just a little repetitive as we start off the show, but then we'll be adding more information from that point on. So this is according to the Financial Post's Naimul Karim, who apparently there was a big meeting of the Canadian bank CEOs on Tuesday. And at that meeting, the CEO of the country's largest bank, who happens to be Dave McKay from the Royal Bank of Canada, says that the growth outlook is looking strong as Ottawa looks to speed up the building of energy related projects aimed at reducing reliance on the United States. Quote, Canada has some unprecedented growth opportunities that we haven't seen in the last decade or 15 years, Royal Bank of Canada Chief Executive Dave McKay said at an event on Tuesday. Quote, I've been more excited about Canada than I have been in the last decade. The tone at the top is really good. That as I mentioned earlier, is a quote that will probably make Rerun Poilièvre spit teeth because he's trying to make us believe that everything's broken, that our prime minister is counterfeit. Again, every accusation is a confession with this one. He said this is the first time in his decade long tenure as CEO that he has seen a risk on theme from foreign investors who have generally been worried about corrections in the mortgage sector, making it hard to attract capital. And on that note, Kids and Cubs, we are preparing an episode where we have somebody who is in real estate here in the region where we are in Kingston, and another person who's a mortgage broker. And hopefully, if we're not able to get them on at the same time, at least one after another, or in pre-recorded interviews that we can put in and make one episode with them two together to provide some insights into real estate and, of course, what's going on with mortgages, because there is a lot of people who will be renewing mortgages this year and next year, and to get their insights a little bit on the market and their insights on some tips or some things that you might want to look for when it comes to renewing your mortgage. Should you do variable rate? Should you do a fixed rate? What does the vibe on the ground seem to be? So hopefully we will be able to bring you both of those, a little bit of more of a news you can use episode than the typical fare that we do. But hopefully that will be something that will be of interest to our viewers. But back to the article. McKay said one of the reasons foreign investors are excited is Canada's goal to create a more diversified economy by focusing on its energy, defense, mining, and transportation sectors. There's a thematic tailwind, he said. I haven't felt it in 10 years. Getting these projects approved, funded, and in place won't be easy, but McKay says there's a feeling that everyone is pulling in the same direction for the first time, and that the view amongst all leaders is that now is the time to get stuff done. National Bank of Canada Chief Executive Laurent Ferreira, who also spoke at the event, said there's an economic war going on, and Canada needs to speed up the building of its key projects if it wants to be part of this. And he says here, New World Order. We need a better term for that, because as soon as you say New World Order, that's a buzzword for the anti-everythings. And yes, even though things are being shaken up and it is creating a New World Order, it's not a New World Order in the same type that they are scaremongering about, fear-mongering about. And just because the terms are exactly the same, it leads to the creation of noise, and you don't want that. So we probably need another term there. He said the events this weekend should play into Canada's decision-making process after the US captured Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro, who is now facing trial on multiple criminal counts in New York. Ferreira said any opposition to Ottawa's nation-building plan, whether it's ideology, whether it's bureaucracy, is not a good thing for our country. And that's another statement that we mentioned would probably make Skippy spit teeth, because he himself is providing lots of opposition to Ottawa's nation-building plan, and it's extremely ideological. And we have the banking sector, which usually is rather supportive of the Conservative Party of Canada and the Conservative movement, stating that this would not be a good idea. So de facto, stating that what it is that Pierre Poilièvre is doing is not a good thing for the country. So with that, and an indication from another one of Canada's top bankers that the tone at the top is good, this directly contradicts the narrative that the Conservatives have us buy without asking too many questions. In terms of the economy, McKay says Canadians may not be buying homes like they used to, but they are using their disposable income to consume more, which has helped to create jobs, stabilize unemployment, and offset some of the impacts of the tariffs imposed by the US. As a result, the economy has been resilient. However, McKay said there are still future risks related to a K-shaped economy when different groups of people recover at different speeds in both Canada and the United States. And we've been warning about that on our show for quite some time now. There's an increasing differentiation between the top 20% of earners in both countries and the bottom 40% to 60%, he said, and that disparity is really driving the political agenda in both countries. That disparity is much greater in the United States and much more severe, he said, and it will become an increasing political issue as you approach the midterms in November. How the Canada-US-Mexico agreement plays out later this year is another thing McKay is keeping his eye on. The current deal between the three nations has shielded Canada from most of Donald Trump's tariffs, but the deal is up for, the article here says renegotiation, but it's really up just for review. The renegotiation isn't scheduled for several years from now yet. He doesn't expect any resulting changes to, quote, shock the overall agreement, quote, because it's really good for America. But it will be tough for every company to make it through that repositioning. The Canadian government is also trying to reposition the banking sector to be more competitive. McKay said he often gets questions about whether he's worried about a fintech or stablecoin disruption, and his response is, who are you going to protect you? He says RBC spends an enormous amount of money and time to tackle issues related to cybersecurity, and that bar keeps getting higher, noting that not every institution can afford that. So, some bit of positive news there with regard to the banking sector. And on that front, according to Yahoo News, and this is the Canadian press, it indicates that the Canadian economy growth is expected to slow to 1.5% in 2026. And this is something that we have hinted at before on the show. A new report forecasts Canadian growth will slow to 1.5% this year from 1.7% in 2025. Dawn Desjardins, chief economist at Deloitte Canada, said she is cautiously optimistic, though, that the economy will gain momentum through the second half of the year. Overall growth is probably going to be a bit slower than in 2025, but when we're thinking about the setup for 2027, if we're correct about this momentum building in 2026, the second half, I think it sets it up nicely for 2027, she said. Desjardins said last year was mired in disruptions and policy uncertainty, but that fears of a significant global economic slowdown proved unfounded, and a recession in Canada did not materialize. Quote, below the surface, however, volatility in trade activity played a bigger than usual role in the Canadian economic data and masked a softening in consumption and a pullback in business investment. Desjardins said two key trends to watch this year are free trade and investment, or trade and investment, with the review of CUSMA scheduled for July, and the federal government's plan to stimulate billions in investment from the private sector outlined in its latest budget. The report said the CUSMA review will be pivotal, and potential changes that restrict or eliminate access to key American markets present a risk. But our baseline assumption is that Canada will be able to maintain its favorable trading relationship with the United States. Quote, that will alleviate some of this uncertainty. Now, that's not assured, but it is our assumption. And we aren't assuming that we're going to necessarily see tariffs on specific industries go away. So there's still going to be that impact on the economy, she said. Business investment may hit a turning point, Desjardins said, as firms get more clarity on trade and see support from the federal government, particularly in the infrastructure and natural resource sectors. Getting more firms to invest could also help improve some of Canada's longstanding issues around productivity. Quote, we have to arm our workforce to be able to improve our productivity and our living standards as well as wages, Desjardins said. Regarding the health of the consumer, she expects spending to be softer in the first half of the year, but says it could ramp up in the second half if there are also improvements in the labor market. Quote, but overall for the year, our numbers don't show a huge increase in spending. And the other factor, of course, is what we are seeing. And the other factor, of course, is that we are seeing a population that is not growing. So, yes, as we mentioned here, population has declined 0.2% in 2025. So, if you hear the conservatives still talking about out of control or rampant immigration, that is literally no longer a thing. According to Ben Cousins in the Financial Post, it says here that 2026 may mark an inflection point for Canada's economy. It says here, Canada's economy was marred by uncertainty in 2025, but 2026 may be the year Canadians finally see some clarity. Canada's slowing population growth, United States tariffs, by Canadian government policy, diversified trade and productivity are emerging as key issues facing the Canadian economy in 2026, according to a report by Deloitte. This year is likely to mark an inflection point for Canada's economy as governments attempt to execute on policies that will create a more attractive environment for investment, Dawn Desjardins, chief economist at Deloitte, said in the report. From improving infrastructure to eliminating barriers to internal trade and reducing regulatory hurdles, Canada is hitting the reset button. Deloitte is predicting the country's economy will only grow 1.5% in 2026 compared to 1.7% last year. And here, kits and cubs, we have a bit of a graph for you that we would like to show you that would indicate what it is that they are seeing here at Deloitte. So hopefully I can raise that up to you. There it is. And in the graph, we have data from the first quarter of 2024 to the fourth quarter of 2026. Of course, all data for 2026 is based on projections, of course, here. But this we see a positive GDP growth in each quarter. Again, 2024 doing very well, and then 2025 we took a little hit. We had one quarter of negative growth in the Q2, positive growth since that, and what we are looking here is some projections. I'm not sure if Q4 numbers are all out now, but we're seeing number and we're seeing some growth in the first quarter of in the first quarter of 2026 and the second quarter of 2026, and continuing growth up until the third quarter with a slight pullback in the fourth predicted. But by the time we get to the third quarter, we are looking at growth at over 2% at that time. All right. Getting back to the article, I'm not sure. Did that work for you? Did you guys see that? Oh, yes. Okay. I happened to scroll down. That's what happened. So back to the article here, it says Deloitte also expects the jobs market to remain fairly subdued in the early parts of 2026 due to weaker demand from goods producing industries, though the unemployment rate should drift downward. Household spending climbed 2.1% in 2025 as Canadians defied the testy economic conditions, but Deloitte said that may change in 2026 as reduced immigration and mortgage renewals weigh on spending habits. Deloitte expects the Bank of Canada to maintain interest rates with inflation largely remaining within the central bank's target range and little evidence that a spike may be on the horizon. A pause to the interest rate easing cycle may bring more home buyers back into the housing market and help those expecting to refinance their mortgage in 2026. Quote, accommodative monetary policy with the Bank of Canada maintaining the policy rate at 2.25% throughout the year will help households who need to refinance their mortgages, Desjardins said. Add in government incentives to build homes, and 2026 is shaping up for a housing bounce back, Deloitte said. After a brutal year for Canada's exporting businesses, Deloitte said it looks like more uncertainty is underway, especially since CUSMA will be reviewed. The review of CUSMA in July 2026 will be a pivotal event, Desjardins said. The ability of Canadian exports to go to the U.S. tariff free if they are compliant with the current agreement has been key in keeping Canada's economy from faltering. Changes to the agreement that restrict or eliminate this access to the US will have dire consequences. We view this as a risk, but not our base case. Canada is already making provisions to protect Canadian business with limits on foreign steel and lumber while also focusing on fast tracking major projects across the country. Quote, it is unreasonable to expect governments to stimulate this structural transition quickly, which means that the economy is likely to remain in a slow growth mode until the latter part of 2026, Desjardins said. So we have that bit of news as well. Also, a little bit of additional news from that I found on Yahoo Finance, and this might be with regard. This is coming from the Canadian press, with regard to that concept of the economic war that was mentioned by the National Bank Chief Executive Laurent Ferreira. In the first of this series of articles that we brought to you. This is from Ian Bickus, and the big conference that they had was called the RBC CEO Conference, and it was held in Toronto. And it says here that national security and rising inequality are two of the biggest risks today, according to bank leaders that were in attendance at the conference. Quote, geopolitics are at our doorstep. National security is, I think, one of the most important priorities of our country. And this is, again, a quote from National Bank Chief Executive Laurent Ferreira. He said the uncertainty is leading to hesitation on investment and a more fragile labor market and consumer sentiment. While he's encouraged by the direction Ottawa is taking, he said everything needs to move faster. Quote, if we want to be part, again, of the New World Order, we need to speed this up. Ferreira came closest to the four CEOs who spoke in the morning to refer to the extraordinary actions of the U.S. in capturing the president of Venezuela early Saturday. He said, quote, the events this weekend should play into decision-making as Canada focuses on nation-building, reindustrialization, and defense. The new tone in Canadian government and the focus on getting projects done is welcome, said RBC Chief Executive Dave McKay. Given the geopolitical world that we live in, the impetus, particularly for Canada, to get these things done is really, really strong. He cautioned that rising inequality is a key underlying cause of some of the political shifts going on, as the top 20% of earners break further away from the majority. Quote, that growing differentiation and disparity is really driving the political agenda in both countries, said McKay. That disparity is much greater in the United States and much more severe and is a huge political issue and will become an increasing political issue. For now, consumers are able to make debt payments and are still spending, but part of that is because Canadians have pulled back on buying homes, he said. I'm guessing if some Canadians are realizing that that the economy may not be everything that we had hoped it would be, and that maybe their prospects of buying a home or acquiring a home are much less today than they were. People might just be resolving that, we're going to be renters, so let's enjoy life and have more experiences. That could be what's going on here. Money that Canadians would otherwise be devoting to debt servicing on real estate is instead going to goods and services, said McKay. He said low activity in condo pre-sales and construction does weigh on the economy, but the higher spending elsewhere has helped create jobs and stabilize employment in the country. The trend, along with the stabilization of tariffs, has helped the economy do better than many had expected. Quote, economies are a lot more resilient today than I would have expected myself 3 months ago, said BMO Chief Executive Darrell White. He said while many clients are adapting well to the trade environment, the bank is advising clients not to rely on a quick resolution as a formal review of the CUSMA approaches mid-year. Quote, to think that we're going to all of a sudden wake up to a new deal in June or July, I think is a bad assumption. Besides macro trends, Canadian banks are also pushing keenly into the cost reduction potential of artificial intelligence as a way to boost the key return on equity measure. CIBC Chief Executive Harry Cullum, who took on the role November 1st, said the bank has been investing close to 20% of its expense base in technology, including AI systems that should lead to higher revenues and return on equity in the future. He is quoted as saying, we can do things more efficiently. So new technologies are going to help, and the way we embrace these technologies will help. Rather than hiring, call it 3 or 4 or 5% incremental full time equivalent per year, perhaps we don't need to do that anymore. TD Bank Group CEO Raymond Chun said the bank is leaning into AI as well as generally modernizing and automating systems. He pointed to mortgage management where costs for adjudication, funding, and discharge are already down over 20%. Quote, in the next 2 quarters, you're going to see an agentic AI layered into each one of those buckets, said Chun. The discharge component, as you layer agentic AI and you actually make the entire process where you don't involve people, we're going from the $19 that we're at today, and we can take out another 50%. He said the bank is also pushing to have more clients do routine banking like check deposits through mobile devices rather than in branch, and similarly shift some of the more than 2 million calls a month it receives to the app. But he said the bank is also going through a hiring push as it looks to add wealth advisors, business bankers, and mortgage and investment specialists across operations. McKay at RBC, which has been named a top 3 bank globally for AI, says there's still lots of opportunity to use AI ahead. I'm really excited, and AI is just another wave of opportunity to create shareholder value and client value at the end of the day. There you have it, kids and cubs. A little bit of an overview of how things are looking financially, particularly to our banking sector, which has had a very, very good year. There is uh, a basic mutual fund in actually not mutual fund, sorry, an ETF, Canadian Banks ETF. And if we look at the one from BMO, for example, which is the Bank of Montreal, um, it is doing relatively well over the past year. If I'm looking at the performance, Canadian banks as a total, their shares are up 40.9% uh, for the period ending December 31st, 2025. That is an extremely big jump. And of course, as well, uh, the price of gold, as we might have mentioned, has increased a lot over the last little bit. Gold is now trading at $4,448 and 40 cents. And just over the past few days, with everything that's been going on in Venezuela, that's at least a very close to $100 jump per ounce in the price of gold, and it was actually a little higher because today it's down a bit. Um, and we mentioned the Canadian dollar dropping down a little bit from its highs, trading in the 73 cents where it was about a week and a half ago, back into the 72 cents range, between 72 and 73. And we also have, uh, for the stock market, the Toronto stock market specifically, um, had a couple of decent days despite some oil stocks being hit a little bit by what was going on in Venezuela, but down a little bit today, but set a new record for trading. I believe it was, well, not too long ago, maybe yesterday it was, hitting 32,417. And just to go back, if we go back to April 8th, 2025, the stock market, the Toronto TSX, was trading at closed at 22,506 and 90. So that's 12,000 gain on the TSX. That's more than half, 50% gain since April 2025, which leads credence to that statement that if you are among the top 20% earners in Canada, where you're more likely to have stocks and bonds, more likely to be invested in Canadian and US banks, for example, and more likely to maybe even be invested in gold. Uh, you have done very, 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 very well this year. Uh, and even if you had US banks as well, um, just taking a look at that. Again, looking at Bank of Montreal data, if I can find it. Um, Let me see that. This is the one here. I can find it. They have been doing very well too. Canadian banks, as we mentioned, up about, I think it was 41%, we mentioned. Um, US banks have done rather well on that front too. I'm just trying to get that number for you. And unfortunately, having a little less success here at it. Let me see if I can get it another way here. There we go. Uh, 1 year up. No, sorry, that's the wrong one. That's Canadian banks. I want American banks. Having a little trouble here. Okay, let's try that again. Now it's my fat finger getting in the way. Um, so yeah, Canadian banks outperforming actually U.S. banks here, from what I can see. U.S. banks only saying up 19.11% over the past year. They took it's been a little bit more of a roller coaster ride if you've had um, the U.S. banks. For some reason, however, this doesn't strike me as being the best. I have a feeling it might be a little more than that, 11%. Don't quote me on that actually, because I'm seeing some other data here that seems to be indicating slightly more. Here I'm seeing one that says 19% wow, year over year. But even if that was the case, it would still be the fact that that Canadian banks, oh no, 19.1%. Okay, now it's similar numbers here. That Canadian banks outperformed US banks over the course of the last year. So that's surprising. That usually doesn't happen. American banks usually perform because they take on more risk. But last year, it would seem that the stability of the Canadian banks was a draw with regard to market performance. So there you go, Kits and Cubs has some, it's not all bad news. Now, of course, um, if we're talking about the stock markets, let's remember that stock markets are not real life and are not the economy, and that there is, uh, in the United States, an overwhelming majority of the strong stock market performance comes from the tech sector, particular things. AI related, and that there's about 7 or 8 companies that are doing the majority of the heavy lifting on that stock exchange. For everybody else, it's slightly more volatile. Let's just put it that way. All right, kids and cubs. A couple little other bits of news because we did mention that the prime minister was in Paris for a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. And, well, uh, they had a couple of decisions that were being made here. This is according from Murray Brewster. They were together to try to firm up actual security guarantees for Ukraine. So it says here, almost 4 years of major conflict, Ukraine has been given a series of concrete security guarantees backed by more than 30 countries, including Canada, that it can take into possible peace talks with Russia. The agreement, backed by, quote, the Coalition of the Willing, provides specific troop commitments from Western nations to deter Russia from restarting the war should a ceasefire take effect. Quote, this is all about building the practical foundations on which peace would rest, said British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who indicated the hardest work is yet to come. Quote, we can only get to a peace deal if Putin is willing to make compromises, and so we will have to be frank. For all Russia's words, Putin is showing that he's not ready for peace. As part of the guarantees signed Tuesday, the US has pledged to help monitor a potential ceasefire. France and the UK have promised to put boots on the ground in Ukraine if a ceasefire takes effect in order to build up regional supply centers that would pave the way for a larger troop deployment if Russia resumed its offensive. Canada has promised a substantial ongoing commitment to the force that would backstop the peace deal. Precisely what kind of forces Canada would deploy is unclear, partly because the military, short of personnel and equipment, is in rebuilding mode. Getting into the meeting, Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked if Canada had the capacity to back up its commitment. Quote, do we have the bench strength, to use your terms? Well, we've been building that bench, Carney said. We're going to continue to build that bench with the largest military buildup in generations coming over the course of the next 5 years. He said the government's planned $81.8 billion defense investment over that period was in part because of issues like this. And of course, as you know, with Operation Unifier, Canada is training lots of Ukrainian soldiers in Poland right now. And then, of course, we also have that operation in Latvia that we were also heading. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the agreement a very concrete document and thanked the countries involved. Reaching that agreement had been a struggle as leaders were distracted by U.S. military action in Venezuela and renewed threats by U.S. President Donald Trump to annex Greenland. Uh, U.S. defense expert said coalition countries will need to level with their publics about what the Ukraine security assurance package means. Quote, the public has to understand that its governments are making a commitment to use military force in the background of a ceasefire agreement, said Matthew Schmidt, a former U.S. Army War College instructor and associate professor at the University of New Haven, Connecticut. There are many aspects of the security guarantees that Russia will find objectionable and has already ruled out entirely, including the presence of NATO in Ukraine. Schmidt said coalition members, including Canada, should be prepared for Moscow to try and undermine the deal through disinformation. Quote, this is exactly the kind of thing that Putin would use to push public opinion against it, Schmidt said. The idea, he said, would be to tell people in Western countries that they don't understand what it would mean to have troops on the ground in Ukraine potentially fighting the Russians. Quote, as they're able to push the information space in that direction, they could over time weaken public support for that coalition, Schmidt said. Um, with regard to some of that, the Prime Minister had been asked some questions in a Q&A from Paris about whether or not troops on the ground are things that he would be willing to consider, and had also, I believe, been asked about his view on Canadian oil with regard to Venezuela. Now, with regard to Canadian oil, because I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to have that um, queued up in the clip. So I'm just going to go to his direct quote to make sure that we have it on the record here, and that he says that he is not worried about the Canadian oil, about the Canadian oil industry being too adversely affected by recent events in Venezuela. He says that the country is because we are sitting on some of the biggest, because Venezuela is sitting on some of the biggest oil reserves in the world, and the seizure of the Venezuelan president and his wife by U.S. forces this week raised questions about the prospect of increased Venezuelan oil production. Carney told reporters in Paris that Canadian oil will remain competitive regardless of what happens next. His quote is, "Canadian oil will be competitive because it will be low risk, low cost, and low carbon, which is what the Pathways Project carbon capture will bring. And that makes Canadians oil companies for the medium and long term, keeps them competitive." So Prime Minister Carney not too worried in the moment about that. Of course, Pierre Poilièvre all of a sudden seems to be worried about that, which is kind of interesting because he didn't seem to be worried all that much about the impact on Canadian oils industry when over the weekend he couldn't rush out quick enough in order to celebrate Donald Trump and celebrate his actions. But now all of a sudden he's going, "Oh my God, this oil might be displaced." Yeah, uh, that's why we said that your statement on Saturday was really, really dumb. So now apparently he's back with, I guess, or he's back on schedule. I don't know, but he had a lot to say the other day, and we'll get to that very soon. But I just wanted to show a couple of moments of the Prime Minister here taking some questions on Ukraine. This is the statement that he had as he was coming, his statement about what the events of the day had yielded.
Bonjour tout le monde, merci d'être venu.
I'm sorry, I forgot that the first little bit was in French. So let me just advance this to the proper timestamp that I need in order to make sure that we have what it is that we are looking for here. And there we go.
It's an important meeting this afternoon between President Zelensky, the U.S. representatives of this peace process, Mr. Witkoff, Mr. Kushner, and the leaders of the core of the coalition of the willing, obviously including Canada. Our main objective is to finalize the security guarantees amongst ourselves which create the possibility of a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. We will also be having discussions around the economic plan, advancing that work, the so-called prosperity plan for Ukraine. All of this is part of a 20-point peace plan that has been negotiated. I will use the assessment of President Zelensky that, in effect, in his judgment, we are 90% of the way there to peace. The final elements need to be negotiated on a tripartite basis, United States, Ukraine, and Russia. Le point final en français.
The final point in French. According to President Zelensky, we are 90% there to reach a peace agreement. And this is what is being expected. And the final points need to be negotiated between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States after this meeting. If we succeed during the meeting, and that is the goal, and I am quite confident that we will succeed today.
So that's just to start, and happy to take some questions.
Prime Minister Michael Couture, CTV News, thanks for taking our questions. In terms of security guarantees that Canada can offer, do we have the military bench strength to supply troops?
Yeah, I'll just give a high-level outline and answer your question. And I say high-level in part because what we're doing, and I want to salute Jenny Carrigan, the chief of our defense force, our national security advisors, others who've been working intensively over the last few weeks, but over the course of the last months with their partners in developing the operational elements of this. So I'm going to speak in a high level. recognizing there's a lot more underneath about what I'm about to say. The first line of defense, obviously, is the Ukrainian armed forces, and one of the elements of the 20-point plan, peace plan, is going to be the size of the Ukrainian armed forces, which is considerable as it's negotiated now, so the size would be very large. Secondly, there is monitoring and other support, logistics support that would be provided, training support to make sure that the Ukrainian armed forces over the medium term and longer term can defend themselves. Then the backstops become the coalition, the willing forces, so-called multilateral force, of which Canada would be a member under this framework, and very importantly, the United States is playing a backstop role. Do we have so to get to your specific question, do we have the bench strength, to use your term? Well, we've been building that bench, and we're going to continue to build that bench. The largest military buildup in generations, coming over the course of the next 5 years, an additional $80 billion of investment, in part because of issues like this, very importantly because of issues in our perimeter. I'll point specifically to the Canadian Arctic as an example there. So yes, we do. There would need to be a redeployment. But the last point I'll make, and just to put in context, which of course we're stronger together. So we're as part of a coalition, as part of a multilateral force coming behind and coming with the Americans. That means that our contribution has a much bigger effect than obviously we would if we were on our own.
You mentioned in your opening that today is to finalize those security guarantees. If that doesn't happen today, is today's meeting a failure?
Well, we don't expect to fail. A lot of great work has been done that's brought to the point. It needs to be interrogated, if you will, by leaders, which is what's going to happen this afternoon. And I think the way I look at this in terms of the intention and the goodwill and the seriousness with which the countries, Canada included, are approaching this is if we don't finalize, and I think we will finalize, but if we were not to finalize today, it's because we've identified issues where they could be improved or adjusted, and then we would come back and work on this. This is not a make or break, but maybe I'll just reemphasize one point. There is a lot of momentum in this process. And that's why it's important. It's important that Canada is here. That's why I'm here, is because there's momentum, because that progress has been made, and important to, as I say, to finalize this key component of a broader peace agreement.
Bonjour, Monsieur Carney, Christian Noël.
Hello, Mr. Carney, Christian Noël, Radio-Canada. More concretely, what can we offer Ukraine? Can we offer Canadian troops in Ukraine? You've never excluded that completely. Would it be especially training and equipment? And if we cannot agree today on security guarantees, what will be the consequences? Well, let's start. Let's start with the Canadian offer. These are all possibilities at this point in time. So we start with training, yes. Right now, Canada provides training for Ukrainian troops in Poland. We've been offering training in Poland for Ukrainian troops during the war. And I can provide you the specific numbers after the press conference. I can check, but we're talking about tens of thousands of soldiers. I think it's around 45,000. Right? Yes, we have to do more because the size of the Ukrainian troops will increase because of this peace agreement. That is the first point. And secondly, we can provide logistical support, surveillance support, and cyber support as well. Thirdly, we can and we will provide the production, arms production for Ukrainians. We will have joint ventures between Ukraine and Canada. We have already begun this process, but they will ramp up. And as for the different opportunities, yes, there are different possibilities, but we do need to have a coalition of the willing. We need to have a multilateral force, including the United States. And this is exactly what's on the table. As for the details, we will have an open, transparent discussion after this peace process, because we need to have a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine in order to implement these security guarantees.
So there you go, Kits. That was just the Prime Minister's thoughts a little bit on what was going on there, stating, of course, that they are not expecting to fail, and that failure isn't really something that could be in the cards, considering their objectives and where they are in the process. If anything, if a deal was not able to be completely finalized at that time, it's because, they were perfecting it and making adjustments rather than it being a critical situation that should have anybody panicking. Oh my God, is this on the verge of failing? The Prime Minister yesterday also had the opportunity to meet with the leader of Denmark and have a meeting. Well, had an opportunity to meet and have a meeting. Of course, they had a meeting if they had an opportunity to meet. Didn't really choose my words great there. But according to the Prime Minister's office here, it says today on the margins of the Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris, France, the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, met with Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen. Prime Minister Carney and Prime Minister Frederiksen affirmed their enduring support for Ukraine against Russian aggression and agreed on the imperative of achieving a just and lasting peace in Ukraine backed by robust security guarantees. As NATO allies and close partners, the leaders discussed Arctic security and the growing investments from both nations in infrastructure and defense. They also identified opportunities to deepen economic and security ties in key sectors, including critical minerals and metals, life sciences, quantum technology, and energy. Prime Minister Carney emphasized Canada's support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Denmark, including Greenland, which must be respected in accordance with international law. The Prime Minister affirmed Canada's support for today's joint statement on Greenland by Denmark and European leaders. The future of Greenland is for Greenland, and Denmark to determine. Canada will continue to work with Denmark, Greenland, and other partners in our shared responsibility for the security and resilience of the Arctic. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Prime Minister Frederiksen agreed to remain in contact. And that joint statement on Greenland reads as such. Posted on the 6th of January 2026, statement by President Macron of France, Chancellor Merz of Germany, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, Prime Minister Tusk of Poland, Prime Minister Sanchez of Spain, Prime Minister Starmer of United Kingdom, and Prime Minister Frederiksen of Denmark on Greenland. Arctic security remains a key priority for Europe, and it is critical for international and transatlantic security. NATO has made clear that the Arctic region is a priority, and European allies are stepping up. We and many other allies have increased our presence, activities, and investments to keep the Arctic safe and to deter adversaries. The Kingdom of Denmark, including Greenland, is part of NATO. Security in the Arctic must therefore be achieved collectively in conjunction with NATO allies, including the United States, by upholding the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the inviolability of borders. These are universal principles, and we will not stop defending them. The United States is an essential partner in this endeavor as a NATO ally, and through the defense agreement between the Kingdom of Denmark and the United States of 1951. Greenland belongs to its people. It is for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. So there you have that. And of course, here it says that the Prime Minister affirmed Canada's support for that specific joint statement, even though we're not necessarily a signatory to it. So that took place as well. Let's see, do I have anything else for you today, kids and cubs, that I wanted to bring you in terms of information? Because I have a feeling that this might be the extent of all I had. But just wanted to take another check to be sure here with what I had written in my original episode description. No, that is indeed everything, kids and cubs. The last thing I wanted to bring you, because I mentioned that Pierre had a lot to say. Oh, by the way, I'm not sure if the segment I did had cut off before this, but it was announced, breaking news, that the Prime Minister would be announced that he would be going to China. I think it is next week to meet with the delegation and meet with a delegation to meet with a delegation from there. Um, this is according to Spencer Van Dyke and Jordan Fugel of CTV. I guess there's a little more details than there was before because there was only a Canadian press article that had the dates. But here it says Prime Minister Mark Carney will visit China next week. The Prime Minister's office confirmed to CTV News today. The planned visit, which will take place from January 13th to 17th, aims to elevate engagement between Ottawa and Beijing on trade, energy, agriculture, and international security, the Prime Minister's office said. It will mark the first visit to China by a Canadian Prime Minister since 2017. The relationship between the two countries has been fraught since 2018 after Canada arrested Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou on behalf of the United States over bank fraud charges. Days later, China separately detained Canadians Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor over allegations of espionage, accusations they denied. Both men were eventually released after spending more than 1,000 days in a Chinese prison, not long after Meng himself was released from house arrest. But since becoming Prime Minister, Carney has signaled attempts to deepen the relationship with China in some sectors. In September, he met Chinese Premier Li Qiang, Chinese second highest ranking official, on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Then in October, Carney met with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Gyeongju, South Korea, after which Carney and Canada's relationship with China is at a turning point. He also said at the time that he had accepted Xi's invitation for a state visit, which would happen at a mutually convenient time. There you go. So that is taking place, some advancements and developments there. And I believe it was Kit Linda who prompted me to put that back on the record because she had mentioned it in the chat. There you go. The final thing that I have for you here is Pierre Poilièvre having quite a bit to say for some reason. Well, for some reason, I think we know what the reason is that he really, 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 really needs to change the channel. But 19 hours ago, apparently, so this has something to do with something the Prime Minister said yesterday, and it's about the quote about oil. This morning, Mark Carney said Canadian oil will remain competitive because it is low risk, low cost, and low carbon. Canadians deserve the truth. Venezuela's return to global oil markets is a specific threat to Canadian oil sands petroleum in a way that Saudi oil and other light crudes are not, and we can't afford to delay any action that will protect our sovereignty and give us new customers to sell it to, especially a pipeline to the Pacific coast. And that's why I celebrated President Donald Trump invading the country that has the third largest oil reserves in the world. Just let that land for a bit. Of course, that last little bit he didn't include in this text. Many U.S. refineries, especially on the Gulf Coast, are purpose-built to process heavy crude, the type of oil only found in Canada and Venezuela. They've invested billions in specialized equipment, including cokers that only earn a return when fed heavy barrels. For years, many of these same refineries ran Venezuelan heavy crude until sanctions cut it off and they switched to Canadian oil. If Venezuelan supply returns, Gulf Coast refineries like Marathon Petroleum in Garyville, Valero in Corpus Christi, and Chevron in Pascagoula can easily switch between Venezuelan and Canadian oil without major retooling. In plain terms, for every barrel of Venezuelan oil processed by the U.S., 1 barrel of Canadian oil will be displaced, first on the Gulf Coast and eventually in the Midwest, because they compete for the same limited specialized refinery capacity. In other words, we need other customers. Fast. If we don't get the federal government out of the way of a pipeline to the Pacific, which a plan for which still does not exist, nor a proposal, nor a proponent, nor people willing to fill it, nor a path, nor consent, we could suffer enormous losses of jobs, tax revenue, and sovereignty. Yeah, you should have thought of that before you decided to press your lips to Trump's butt. Canada must first diversify beyond the US as our only customer. The first and fastest way to do that is by approving and building a pipeline to the Pacific. It's a good thing that the Liberals did that while on TMX a while ago, or else we'd really be screwed now, wouldn't we? Gee, it really is a shame you conservatives spent a decade deciding to fundraise off the fear of activist judges and the refusal of wanting to actually sit in the room with Indigenous people and breathe the same air because I believe, as Andrew Scheer said it, I don't need your Indigenous votes or something like that. Yes. And I remember you saying that they just needed a stronger work ethic. Yes, indeed. That's had you done what you said you were going to do in a way that was actually legal and constitutional, maybe we wouldn't have this problem today. Oops, that's the wrong cup. This is the right cup. I just pulled a Skippy. I was about to drink from an empty cup. Oh, there you go. Much better. Canadians do not need more photo ops and reassurance. They need the Prime Minister to get out of the way, grant a permit for nothing that exists again, and let private investors and trade workers build a pipe to the Pacific. I'm ready to work with the Prime Minister and any party at a moment's notice to protect our workers and defend our sovereignty. Also, when we're talking about the new pipeline, let us remind Skippy as well and all people that share this particular attitude and approach that we actually have a pipeline already built and ready for sale if the proponents would want it. And I'm not hearing any offers yet. So again, Skippy going, get out of the way and approve a pipeline. There's nothing to approve yet. And number two, the question of how many people would be willing to put in all that money to build a new pipeline and wait for it to be built with all the drama that can surround that before they can start filling it and making money on it when there's just one right there that they can buy. If people are not lining up to buy the one that exists, there might be not as much interest as Pierre suspects in having people line up to actually build a whole new one. And with regard to the Venezuelan oil, something is similar there as well. I've been listening to some experts, and it's going to take a certain number of years for that industry to even move from producing 1 billion barrels a day, 1 million barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day. And there's a lot of money that has to go into that, which is an area that is uncertain. And if we are talking about the United States' love of free markets, if the United States is going to make oil companies invest there, we're no longer talking about free capital markets now, are we? So just because the resource is there, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to be able to extract it. But just because the resource is there doesn't mean that the type of security and stability that businesses would like in order to be able to exploit that opportunity exists as well. And it might be a while before that comes to be the reality in Venezuela, which is why the Prime Minister is not necessarily panicking in the way that Pierre is at the moment. But it's really interesting to see Pierre, who just a couple of days was celebrating the very events that could lead to this situation about which he is now running around with his hair on fire, warning us all about. But then again, this is from a guy who thinks that get out of the way and just approve it when it doesn't yet exist to approve is a plan, as we saw in that letter, and believes that, hey, knock it off is a negotiation strategy, one that would be particularly effective with Trump. So for someone who is so limited in their plans and their strategies, I found that he sure did have a lot to say about that. Again, the ever increasing number of words is an indication of the level of panic. Because what he said on Saturday, really did not land well with a lot of people. This is another screed that looks like it was written by the office of Danielle Smith and sent to him and say, here, publish this and put your name on it. I'm just saying. All right. One last little thing, a cool thing, this one, before we go. We know that the Prime Minister of Canada plays hockey, goaltender, talks about it often. But did you know that his wife, Diana Fox Carney, might be a bit of a badass as well in her own right when it comes to hockey? Because according to Tom Ayers, who is a reporter and editor, these images came on our feed this morning. Diana Fox Carney, the PM's wife, scrimmaged with the Cape Breton Blizzard girls hockey team and the Cape Breton University Capers women's squad today before she officially opened the Kehoe Forum, billed as the first dedicated home for women's hockey in Canada. And she is, right over here. And just chat with everyone, giving a little skate with the puck. And there you go. So, yeah, I think I'm starting to realize why this marriage works. They both play hockey. They are both economists. They are both extremely successful in their own rights, in their own respective careers. Wow, that seems that I have to say that registers on my cool meter. Absolutely. So there you go. Just a little bit of extra news out there that I wanted to bring to you today. Giving a lot more perspective, right? Because again, when we went to Venezuela, the first thing we thought was, "Oh my God, the oil!" And when we learn about how long it will take to get the United States, get to the Venezuelan oil online, all that is required, and then we look at all the potential pitfalls that could happen, that companies don't want to go because there's not enough security there. Companies might be forced somehow by the Trump administration to go do something there. That might not be so good. They might not be down with that. There could be cartels in Venezuela that would not be all that happy about US presidents and make their lives very, very, very miserable while they are there, depending on how much violence is used in order to seize these assets and take control of them. There could be a situation where there is some type of uprising that would very much hamper that. So the winning conditions are far from being present for them to just go in and start extracting. It would seem as well that there is a situation where I think the current interim leader might be, um, let's just put it this way, not the interim leader, sorry, Machado, I think it is, that wanting to dedicate her Nobel Peace Prize to him was not enough, uh, but guaranteeing that a certain uh, number of barrels going their way might be something that he likes. According to Ron Filipowski, who's the editor in chief of MidasTouch.com, he says Machado offered to share her Nobel Peace Prize with Trump if she could run Venezuela. Maduro's VP offered to give Trump 30 million barrels of oil if their regime could remain in power. Trump took the oil. So if anybody is still having any delusions that this was about liberating the people of Venezuela, we're looking at a situation here right now where Maduro and wife are gone. It's still the Maduro regime. There's an offer from the regime of 30 million barrels of oil if the regime could remain in power. And Trump said, yeah, I like that oil. Thank you very much. And The Venezuelans are stuck with the Maduro regime, just not Maduro specifically. Um, Pierre's Down with Socialism, Long Live Freedom sure did not age well. Now, did it? Mm. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. And on that front, Kits and Cubs, we have the wonderful, the great, the fantastic, the fabulous, the utterly delightful Theo Mudakis, who has hit the nail right on the head with his editorial cartoon for the day today. For those who are watching, it is a series of dominoes lined up, Venezuela being the first one, Colombia the second, Mexico the third, Greenland the fourth, Panama the fifth, because remember, he still wants to take control of that Panama Canal, Cuba next, and then Canada. And he's kicking down the first domino, and you have Skippy doing that. Remember those Toyota commercials? Aren't you happy? You got a Toyota, and everybody jumps. And so he's doing that jump, saying, "Go, Trump, go!" Yeah. But now he wants you to believe in some very long ass tweets that all of a sudden he's concerned about the possibility that something could happen to our oil. Theo also, Kits and Cubs, I believe, had a pretty good one yesterday because I had referred to it on the show and then forgot to show it to you. But this is, again, right bang on. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. And Donald Trump is holding the outline of the country of Venezuela in his hand. Putin is holding the one of Ukraine. They are both dressed exactly alike, and the caption is Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Dumb being Donald Trump, D being Bad Boy Vladdy. Again, Theo Mudakis rocking my world with some very good editorial cartoon content. Yeah, Kit Linda, cheerleader Skippy. Mm-hmm. Kajillion. Trump doesn't share anything. Indeed. Indeed. Oh boy. Yeah. Lot going on there. All right, Kids and Cubs, that's the end of this episode, or this part 2 of our episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless, so please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really love it when you do. It makes us smile. It makes us a little happy. And Kids and Cubs, please, if you are doing so, share a little word about why it is our content resonates with you. That is advertising that we just cannot buy. It is priceless, and we are so thankful that you deem us worthy of it. Now, Kits and Cubs, I do not have the graphics and stuff to have to show you here. So if you are looking for the list of our episodes so that you can find them on a source other than our YouTube page, then you would go to podpage.com, the True North Eager Beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And I will put that here in the chat. You click on that. That will bring you to our pod page. And there, if you happen to be on the go, right now we don't have any recent downloads for you in terms of audio casts. We're hoping to fix that very soon. And but when that is up and running again, when you need to stay informed, but you need to take on the day at the same time, you can pop us in your ears and take us with you. We are lightweight and portable and sponsored by the Ray Girl. So thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. And Kits and Cubs, if you would like to help us another way, well, then you would need to go to our YouTube page, True North Eager Beaver on YouTube. And there you have some buttons that you can subscribe. You can click to subscribe. There's like share and subscribe. So we would really like it if you could do that. And because it helps us with the algorithm and it makes our numbers increase. And that makes us very happy. And of course, you will enjoy the approval of Kits Elaine and Kit Cassie. And there I have a link for that for you as well if you would like to find us. Now, finally, Kits and Cubs, if you would like to offer us some financial support in order to help us with the costs that we encourage to in to bring this show to you, because they will be going up, so we need your help more than ever. You can make a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund by going to our coffee page. That is coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. And there you can make a contribution to the the Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, where you can do your bit to fight the scourge that is dry beaver. It's very important that we do that. And if you would like to do your bit to keep your favorite beaver moist, a couple of loonies or toonies in there would make us extremely happy, make our day. And of course, no donation is too small. Now, if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing, Kits and Cubs, please know that a direct bank transfer to our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, will make sure that your transaction remains entirely Canadian. It will go from your banking institution to ours directly. None of it will go to the USCE Tech Bros. That is very, very, very important. And whatever cut would go to them actually would come to us, which means that you get more bang for your buck. So if you would like to bang your beaver, if you would like to. That was you set me up for that, Kits, because when I read the comments, you said, "Oh, those beavers and bangings at the same time. I don't know if I could stand it." So you set me up for that one. You tossed the ball right over the plate, and I just went to give that one a hit. So if you would like to get more bang for your buck, please go that way. And remember that we have memberships and, of course, super chat function on our YouTube if you would like to help us that way. And thank you for everything that you contribute. Now, Kits and Cubs, please know that if you are not able to contribute financially, our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, is where you can contribute in other ways by letting us know what you think about the show, giving us some guest suggestions, sending us some articles that you think we should be aware of, all that kind of good stuff. And remember our Kids Who Cook hashtags if you want to have a little fun with us, or even just sharing some good news. A lot of you do it in the chat. And as you saw at the beginning of the show, I wanted to highlight some of your good news because I like sharing in your joy, just like you like sharing in mine. So thank you so much for doing that. We love everything that you send us. Of course, Kits and Cubs, we have our socials at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge and on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home. And of course, right down here in the comment section on our YouTube page, there's also an Instagram and a Damn Fam Discord that you can participate in to keep the conversation going after the show. So lots of ways for you to get more beaver when yours truly cannot be here. And of course, remember, regularly enough, Mr. Grizzly has his grizzly growls sometime in the late afternoon, and his weekly roundup, or his weekly sort of take on the week on Fridays. So lots to do here on our site and on our pages. And I will be talking to Mr. Grizzly about setting up our next date for our next pubcast as well. So stay tuned for that, Kits and Cubs. All right. Let's see. What else do we have here? Because democracy is something that you do, we are going to bring your attention again to House of Commons petition E6821, which seeks to get to encourage our MPs to introduce some legislation that would make it such that Canadian media would be owned by Canadians and operated by Canadians, presenting news for the benefit and edification of Canadians. So if this is something that you would like to support, it's something that I have supported personally. We are now at 8,762 signatures. It seems to be growing by about 300 or so signatures per day. So Please let everybody know about that so it can continue to grow. And because this is very important, it is a matter, in our opinion, of national security. And we need to make that happen. And I am aware that Kit Linda, if I am not mistaken, has sent us some information about another petition that we should keep our eyes on. So I will go check it out. It is petition E7027. It is a petition about civil and human rights. And it reads, whereas the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms exists to protect individuals and minority communities from discriminatory laws, whereas recent legislation enacted by the governments of Alberta and Saskatchewan restricts the rights, dignity, and safety of transgender and gender diverse people, particularly children and youth, including access to gender affirming and medically appropriate care. Whereas these provincial governments have invoked the notwithstanding clause to shield such legislation from judicial review, thereby preventing charter challenges from being meaningfully heard. Whereby the Constitution Act of 1867 provides the federal government through Section 90 with the authority to disallow certain provincial legislation in order to protect constitutional principles and minority rights. And whereas the use of extraordinary constitutional powers to limit charter protections warrants careful federal review and response, we, the undersigned, concerns allies of transgender Canadians, call upon the Minister of Health to recommend and support within Cabinet the exercise of the Government of Canada's constitutional authority, including the power of disallowance allowed under Section 30 of the Constitution Act 1867 to annul or repeal provincial legislation enacted in Alberta and Saskatchewan that restricts the rights of transgender and gender diverse people and has been shielded from charter scrutiny through the use of the notwithstanding clause, and to affirm the federal government's responsibility to uphold charter rights across Canada. This is a petition that started circulating on December 18th, 2025. It closes for signature on February 16th. The member of parliament who has sponsored it is Don Davies, member for Vancouver Kingsway and the interim leader of the New Democratic Party caucus. And this one has already collected 25,568 signatures, kits and cups. Damn, Canada. Thank you so much for that. Yes, indeed. So I am including the link right here in the chat as well. Please go and sign that one. I am going to do that as soon as the show is over. In fact, you know what, kits and cubs? I'm going to do better than that. I am, let's see, can I do this right here? Yes, I am going to sign it right now. There we go. Actually, you know what? Because I have to enter the whole address, I was going to put it on screen as you seeing me do that. But of course, I do not want to broadcast my address to the entire universe. So I will do it after the show. But no, it will be done. So if you would... yes, indeed, Kitlinda, it argues that there's an out for the provinces not invoking the notwithstanding clause using a disallowance. A lot of there's been a lot of memes in the video shorts talking about that. I'm not sure if it has ever been used in the history of Canada. I'd have to look. Has Section 90 ever been invoked in Canada? I think it might have, maybe once or twice, but I'm not quite sure. Yes, Section 90 of the Constitution Act in 1867 has been invoked in Canada many times, though not since 1943. Since Section 90 applies to the federal power of disallowance to provincial legislation, allowing the federal cabinet, governor general, and council to nullify a provincial law within 1 year of its passage. It said it was used frequently in early Confederation, and over 100 times in total at that point. The grounds for use: the power is primarily used on 4 grounds, including when a provincial bill exceeded its jurisdiction, conflicted with federal policy, or was deemed unjust or unwise. The final time the power was used was in 1943 against an Alberta statute, the act to prohibit the sale of land to any enemy, any aliens, and Hutterites for the duration of the war. Okay. While the power remains, it would be interesting to know what it was specifically about the Hutterites that the government of Alberta at the time did not like. While the power remains in the text of the Constitution, could technically still be used, it has fallen into disuse and is widely considered by constitutional scholars to be politically, quote, unusable, unusable due to modern conventions of federalism and judicial review. Its use today would likely trigger a significant constitutional dispute. Yeah, perhaps, but it is the law that is on the books and nobody cleared it off, which means it could be used. The power of disallowance in Section 90 is distinct from the notwithstanding clause, Section 33 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which provinces have used much more recently. So perhaps that is disallowance is a thing. Perhaps it's not. I'm not sure that there's anything specifically in the law that says that if you haven't invoked a law, after a certain amount of time, that all of a sudden you can't invoke it anymore. Like I said, we've had other changes to the way that we govern ourselves since that might have an impact on that. But yeah, it would be very interesting that if it could be used in these particular cases. And as Kit Linda M notes, it's funny that the last time it was used was due to Alberta 2. And I had that exact same thought actually when I read that. Huh, isn't that funny? All right, kids and cubs. That's all I've got for you today. Remember, it could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Amour et bisous. Mhm. And we will see you tomorrow, hopefully with our regular restream all set up, which will allow us to do our regular broadcast in the way that we are used to. But today, in order to sign out, we are going to have to do it through a MacGyvered way as well. So, kits and cubs, if you would, it might take me a couple of seconds to set that up. But if you would, kits and cubs, at the count of three, say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. And if I am able to get that, this is very weird. Oh, yeah, I remember. I didn't do that on that day because I had to head out. So let me try that one more time. Kits and cubs, if you could say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. Come on, I'm trying to coordinate this so it works at the same time. In 1, 2, 3. Okay, okay. I hear you. I hear you. And let's see if I can make this work. There, some caps. Oh no! You got cock blocked. Let's see if I can make this a little better.
Absolutely. Here you go.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors. The Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, let's see if I can bring you a little bit of news of Canadians who make us proud. As we mentioned during our holidays show, the Governor General named 80 more people to the Order of Canada. Some were named and some were elevated. So I thought that we would bring you a little bit more about them so that you can learn about them. Companions, the Honorable Rosalie Silberman Abella. She is an icon of Canadian values. Born in a displaced persons camp to Holocaust survivors, she became the first Jewish woman on Canada's Supreme Court. She set the bar with her landmark constitutional law rulings and shaped equality and human rights worldwide. She is now an esteemed professor at the Harvard Law School, elevated to a Companion of the Order of Canada. Simon Brault from Saint-Jean-de-Mata, Quebec, is a pillar of the arts and culture sector and director of the Canada Council for the Arts. He redefined its role by focusing on democratization and accessibility, strengthening support for artists, including those from diverse backgrounds and indigenous communities. A tireless advocate, he worked to highlight the fundamental importance of culture in all spheres of society. Of course, we mentioned Raffi on our show. A beloved singer-songwriter and entertainer, Raffi has dedicated his life to championing children's rights and well-being. His songs have impacted generations with his message of love, environmental stewardship, and social responsibility. As the creator of the Raffi Foundation for Child Honoring, he has shaped our modern discourse to ensure a safe future for the children of the world. Then we have Shaf Khashoggi, who is a premier thoracic surgeon scientist whose groundbreaking work has transformed transplant surgery globally. He continues to expand possibilities within regenerative medicine, particularly through advancements in lung preservation during critical transplant procedures. He also excels as an educator and hospital administrator, shaping the future of healthcare through innovation and leadership. We have the Honorable Michael James Moldaver, who is recognized for his distinguished service to Canadian law. As a Supreme Court Justice, he shaped criminal law and chartered jurisprudence. A respected educator and mentor, he contributed to legal scholarship and professional development, strengthening Canada's justice system through decades of leadership, insight, and unwavering dedication. And then we have Lorne Tyrrell from Edmonton, a distinguished professor and clinician scientist at the University of Alberta. Lorne Tyrrell leads groundbreaking virology research as director of the Li Ka-shing Institute. His pivotal role in Canada's pandemic response, mentorship of emerging scientists, and prolific publications underscore his enduring impact on the medical science, public health, and innovation. Named Officer of the Order of Canada, we have John Cameron Bell. John Bell has helped develop oncolytic virotherapy treatments that harness the body's immune system to fight cancer. As an entrepreneur, principal investigator, National Research Network lead, and professor at the University of Ottawa, he has built Canada's foundation in the field while driving research that shapes international progress. We have the Honorable Janice Charette. Janice Charette is a renowned and highly respected former public servant noted for having served twice as clerk of the Privy Council, Canada's most senior public service role. Her nearly 40-year career is marked by in-depth government expertise, nonpartisan leadership, and a steadfast commitment to serving Canadians with integrity and dedication. And there's Bert Cecil Crowfoot, who is a member of the Siksika First Nation, Blackfoot, and is a respected journalist and acclaimed photographer. He is the founder and CEO of the Aboriginal Multimedia Society of Alberta, a news and communications society dedicated to creating media that reflects the values of Indigenous people across Canada. And last for today, Adele Diamond from Vancouver, British Columbia, is a groundbreaking researcher and co-founder of the field of developmental cognitive neuroscience. Through collaborations integrating diverse disciplines and her talent for knowledge translation, she has transformed our understanding of early cognitive development and the brain's prefrontal cortex. She has also shaped social policies and improved medical and educational practices worldwide. There you go, kids and cubs. Just about 10 or so Canadians who have spent lifetimes making us very proud and were properly recognized for those efforts. And with that, kids and cubs, I must bid you adieu, adieu to you and you and you. Farewell, I must bid you adieu. All right, I'm off. We will see you tomorrow. And thank you for your patience and understanding as we had to MacGyver this episode for you. Overall, didn't do so well, didn't do so bad. And with that, I am gone. Bye-bye.